Snowpack have managed to get hold of a Polaris sled. So this is running until April. So the draw will actually be April 4th. So it will be after the last day of the Snowpack. And the one on the right is for the prizes on the stage this evening. So you're more than welcome to come up and have a look during the intermission. There is an airbag and then there's some goodies from the local sponsors. The tickets do cost. However, all that money is going back into the State of the Snowpack and is allowing us to put on these free events and get people involved in the backcountry, which is awesome. So let's get on with this evening. So welcome to the second Snowpack, State of the Snowpack of the year. I just want to do a land acknowledgement that we acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located within the Kakanamakis, the unceded territory of the Yakaninglet. We recognise that we live, work and play within their vast lands that are stewarded by the Tanaha-speaking people of British Columbia, Montana and Idaho. And it's really easy for me, I said this last time, for me to stand and read this, but I genuinely feel very privileged that we get to use these lands, and I feel like recreating on them in these beautiful mountains, we are super lucky. So it's good to acknowledge that. I also have to do a quick disclaimer. The State of the Snowpack and the information we present are my own observations to the best of our ability. This presentation doesn't actually replace getting actual Avalanche training. If you don't have it, quick plug, I work for Mountainatics. We have 7 spaces left of the AST one this season. So if you haven't got it yet, you're welcome to come and speak to me. Sign up to an AST or CA course this winter. And what you do with this information that we present is completely your own responsibility. So use it responsibly. So what's everyone doing since the last time we met? Can you raise your hand if you came last time to the State of the Snowpack? Okay, a few people. This is your first State of the Snowpack of this year? First State of the Snowpack ever? Oh, some newbies, awesome. If you've been out ski touring, sledding, recreating the outdoors since the last time we met? Few people? If you submitted a min to the AvCan since then? There was way more hands up the one before than this one. Olivia is there glaring at you all. But yeah, just it is a quick plug for AvCan, and they do some great work, and Olivia is here to talk about what they're doing and the State of the Snowpack. However, they also rely on us as a group to give them feedback as well. So if you get a chance, and you don't need to give out where you're secretly going snowboarding or skiing, you can just put a pin somewhere near where you went and give information about the distance, how high you were, the snowpack. And you don't have to give away your secret stash, but it gives the AvCan South Rockies team a lot to work on. So for those that haven't been, the State of the Snowpack is a community conversation with the aim of saving lives in the backcountry. It's bringing together local professionals, recreationalists, guides, instructors, so we can work together to keep our community safer. We have to say a quick thank you to our sponsors. So these are the main sponsors for the whole of the State of the Snowpack. So you've got Arc'teryx, Helicat Canada, Polaris, and Klim. And Klim are the people that have wonderfully donated this airbag that we're going to give away this evening. And then our local sponsors. So first of all, of course, Bobby and the team here at the Central. We wouldn't be able to host these events without a place to host them. So can we just give them a big round of applause for hosting us? And definitely buy another beer of the information, because that's what keeps them running. Fernie Alpine Resort, Avalanche Canada, and Mountainatics Guiding and Instruction. Like I said, I will put this up again in the intermission. So if you haven't bought raffle tickets, you totally can in the break. And if you want to learn more, so these don't just run here. They actually run across numerous locations across BC. So they're actually a really good resource. And as you can see by the camera up there, they are all recorded live, but they are also all put on their website. So the other useful thing is if you're traveling and going to Nelson or Revelstoke, you can watch their most recent State of the Snowpack, and it might give you some information that you might not know just by reading the AvCan bulletin. So it's a great resource. And if you want to get involved and support them, you can visit their website. So without further ado, we've got 2 speakers tonight. The first one is OJ. She is from the South Rockies film team, and she is going to fill us in on the State of the Snowpack. And from what I'm seeing, she's got a difficult job at the moment because there's a lot of warm, cold, warm, cold, warm, cold. But hopefully she has a little bit more information for us. So let's give some applause and welcome to OJ. Hello, everyone. Wait one sec. Jane, remind me how I do this top button? No. Oh, the arrow ones, right? Yeah. Every time. Okay, hi, yes, welcome. Nice to see most of you guys again. If you're new here, my name is Olivia, and I am on the South Rockies field team. We're a team of 3 field workers that head out in our forecasting region and just get real-time snowpack data, weather data, all of that stuff. The South Rockies field team was started because we live in a really high recreational use area. So tons of people are out sledding, skiing, splitboarding, all that kind of stuff. But we don't have a ton of data. It's very data sparse. And kind of like Jake was talking about, that definitely starts with you guys just posting those min reports. So if you've ever read a min report and gotten anything out of it, just consider posting 1, 2, 3 anytime you go out, just to help us out, give us a little bit of information about what you're seeing out in the backcountry. Okay, so it's been 5 weeks since we last talked. Sorry, my photos might not show up super well on this screen, but yeah, there's been tons of good stuff since the last time we were here. It was December 9th. I have had a ton of really good ski days, days out sledding. That's actually a sled and that's a skier, but you know, cold smoke over top, you can't really tell. In that picture there, it's us standing on top of a ridge with beautiful blue sky. So, you know, we've had tons of precip, but we also had some nice blue sky, which was awesome. I love that. The bad, unfortunately, it's been quite windy. I'm sure you guys have noticed that. We've seen lots of wind moving the snow around. We've noticed a lot of wind slab, which has made the skiing, you know, not so great at times. And we've also seen a bit of surface floor in our area, and we'll talk about all of this later on in the presentation. And then, of course, I'm sure you guys know, there's been the ugly. We've had tons of rain since the last time we were here, you know, soaking wet days out in the field. The lower elevation trail networks have been kind of destroyed by the rain. We've had trees down, open creeks, really difficult grooming situations on our snowmobile networks. Yeah, so good, bad, and a bit of the ugly. I'm just going to kind of rick through the weather since the last time I was here and talk about any sort of notable weather events and how the layers have kind of changed in the snowpack. So yeah, we kind of left on a bit of a cliffhanger. We were about to head into a huge precip event. There was a big unknown about how many mils of rain we were going to see, how high up it was going to rain. We were all crossing our fingers, hoping it was going to be snow. But yeah, we're calling it an extreme precip event. And that was kind of early December. Anyone who has a basement in Fernie was probably going to remember that one fondly as like the time we're all praying we don't flood. Yeah, so extreme precip, and in the lizard range specifically, we had really high freezing levels. So rained right up to ridgetop in pretty much every mountain in this area. The freezing levels did rise in the Crow's Nest Pass and in Elkford area as well, but definitely not as much. So I remember going out to Elkford after that, and it actually wasn't the worst thing, but they still had tons of precip. So that was that atmospheric river. But things did turn around. As soon as we got wind, there was a tiny bit of snow in the Crow's Nest Pass. I think we got a report there was maybe 5 to 10 centimeters in the parking lot of their snowmobile trail network up at Atlas. The field team, we just like jetted right out there. We're like, okay, thank God there's some snow. Let's go check it out. And we went out sledding and we found 70 cms of new snow just overnight. And that was a really welcome surprise. We were so happy to see cold snow. It was wicked. That was on December 17th. And so when we got that cold snow over the wet snow that was below it, that made a big melt freeze crust in the snowpack, and we're calling that the December 17th crust or the mid-December crust. So if you ever hear anyone talk about that, it was kind of because of that big event. Following that, we had, just drips and drabs, some more new snow. We had some wind. There was a deep persistent slab problem that formed in the Crow's Nest Pass in that South Rockies region, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Following that, right around New Year's Eve, we entered our first high pressure system of the year. It kind of, of the winter season. It seemed like it'd just been kind of constantly, snowing, raining, and we finally had a few days of clearing. So saw blue sky for the first time. It was a treat. And then January rolls around, and yeah, more new snow. It was great. It stayed relatively cold until about 2 Saturdays ago. It was snowing, and again, we saw that freezing level rise. Last Saturday, freezing level rose to about 2 Saturdays ago, freezing level rose to about 1900 meters, maybe higher in some areas, and we saw rain at those lower elevations. after that, after we all had another cry about the rain, the freezing levels dropped again. And thank goodness we got more new snow. And then kind of the theme about January is that even though we've had all this new snow, we've had lots of winds, really strong winds kind of in all of our forecasting regions. So just looking at our seasonal history, this first chart here on the left is our snow water equivalent. So that's taken off of the Morrissey Ridge. So that's just how much precip has fallen out of the sky, how much actual liquid, whether it's snow, rain, whatever, that's how much liquid has fallen out of the sky. And just looking at that, I'll kind of blow it up so you can see it a bit better. That green line is our 30-year precip average, and the black line is this season. So we're just above that green line. We're above average. That's fantastic. Happy to see it. I just wish that it all fallen as snow. And then on the right side of the screen, that is our sort of 24-hour snowfall totals. So no rain involved, just our snowfall totals in a 24-hour period. So if you look at the screen, you can see early December, we got a bunch of snow, things were looking good. And then there's a bit of a gap there. And that's when we had that atmospheric river because nothing fell as snow. So we had no new snow overnight. And then throughout December, again, drips and drabs. We had a few really good days of more than 30 centimeters of snow. It was awesome. And then you can see kind of early Jan, end of December, there's another gap in that graph. And that's just our 4-ish days of high pressure that we had. And then we just continued on, and January's been looking pretty good. We've had a little bit of new snow almost every day. It's been fantastic. So just general themes of what we're seeing in our forecasting region. A big one is this surface warp. So the high pressure was nice. I was really happy to see the sun. But if you know anything about surface warp, it gets formed on the surface of the snowpack when we have, calm days, cool nights, and clear skies. Those are kind of the big three. And so because we had that right around New Year's Eve, as we were moving through both of our forecasting regions, we were seeing surface hoar on the surface. It's never really a problem to have surface hoar actually on the surface of the snowpack. It's not a problem at all. But once it gets buried, that's when we're going to start to be a little bit concerned. So when I talked about 2 Saturdays ago, we had some rain up to about 1,900 meters. That was a bit of a saving grace for that surface hoar down low. It actually just rinsed it out. So we haven't been able to find any of that surface hoar buried below about 1,800 meters. And as well, I talked about how January's been super windy. So when I talk about spotty surface hoar, it's because that wind has kind of wiped out that surface hoar in a lot of big open alpine features. And we're really just finding it in sheltered tree line areas, kind of above 1,800, 1,900 meters. So we don't have an exact layout of where we're finding it. Like I said, it's kind of spotty, but it is there and it is now buried under a bunch of snow. In the South Rockies, because we had one of those rain events with some cooling following it, we have a thick bridging crust about halfway down in our snowpack. So I was talking about that deep persistent slab problem in December. So early season, and we covered this last time, at the base of our snowpack, we just had a huge melt freeze crust. Well, in the South Rockies, we kind of developed some faceting around that crust. And when we have faceting, facets on a crust, that's just a perfect recipe for a weak layer in the snowpack. And we were seeing right around Christmas, we were seeing some really huge avalanches. I don't know if anyone saw on our Instagram or it was kind of shared all over, but there was some giant avalanches out of the Crow's Nest Pass, like size 3, 3.5 out of some, just paths that I haven't seen run that big ever, knocking out huge timbers and pretty big avalanches to have that early in the season. And those were being kind of scrubbed right to ground. But since we had a bit more snow and then rain and then a freezing event, we have a nice thick bridging crust that's kind of sheltering that instability. And then one other thing we've noticed with that deep persistent slab is we've spent a lot of time digging, doing tests on it, seeing if it's going to react. And good news, those facets seem to be rounding pretty much everywhere. So just forecasters have taken off that deep persistent slab problem in the South Rockies for a couple of reasons. Okay, so these are our current danger ratings. And sorry, that should say Wednesday. So for tomorrow, just before this, I changed it to the incoming forecast. So first off, I guess our forecasting regions have changed slightly. We're operating under that flexible forecast model, and we're able to group, little micro forecasting regions with similar forecasting regions that all have the same snowpack. So for the South Rockies, our Forecasting bubble is the Elkford East, Elkford West, the Crow's Nest Pass North and South regions, and those are all lumped together. And that's really typical of this area. And then in the Lizard Range Flathead area, we have our typical, Lizard Range, the Flathead Range, but we're actually kind of including the Kootenai Pass all the way kind of west to Nelson, that area as well, because their snowpack is quite similar to ours. Uh-oh. Some of the slides are not here. Uh-oh, technical difficulties. Okay, that's okay, I can fake it. What I'm missing is our current forecast picture. But in the Lizard Range Flathead, as of tomorrow, we're gonna be having considerable in the Alpine, considerable in the tree line, and then moderate at the below tree line. And then as we look forward into the week, it's gonna match what the South Rockies is saying there with moderate, low, low, moderate, low, low. And in the South Rockies, that tree line elevation has just changed. It's a moderate hazard instead of that considerable hazard. So they are quite similar, and that's just due to the incoming weather. So let's talk about our problems. So in the Lizard Range and Flathead, our first problem that we have is a storm slab problem. So I know despite the rain that we found in town this morning, we actually did get a decent amount of snow around our forecasting area. And so we're expecting a storm slab, all aspects, all elevations. And that might be slightly more reactive where that surface hoar is present in the snow. So that surface hoar is currently buried, and as we're adding this heavy wet snow on top, it's really going to increase the load onto that surface hoar, and it might just react a little bit more. In the South Rockies, however, the first problem is a wind slab problem. So they did get a little bit of snow, not as much as we got in the Lizard Range, but they've been dealing with extreme winds, and they're all coming from the southwest. So those winds are picking up all of that loose snow that's available for transport and building up really heavy, dense wind slab. They've actually forecasted this wind slab problem in the Alpine, tree line, and below tree line, which getting a wind slab problem below tree line isn't that common. So you have to have some pretty strong winds blowing the snow way down low on the mountain for that to happen. Again, it might be more reactive where that surface hoar is present. So it didn't rain as high in the South Rockies on that 2 Saturdays ago. So that surface hoar, the distribution might just be a little bit different than what we're seeing here in the Lizard Range. So just keep an eye out for that. And then the forecasters have made just a little note that if you show up somewhere and there's been over 15 centimeters of snow, there might be loose snow on the surface. Your brain might not typically clue in to that being a wind slab. So that loose snow might just present as a storm slab in certain areas if they just got more than was forecasted. The second problem in the Lizard Range and the Flathead is a wet loose problem. So yeah, this one's kind of self-explanatory. We've had rain, we have warming temperatures. All of that is just making that snowpack super wet and is just going to cause a wet loose problem. And they're forecasting that in the tree line and below tree line. And then same thing in the South Rockies, it just mirrors it. We're going to be having rising freezing levels, increasing temperatures. And yeah, obviously where the snowpack is wet, duh, that sounds like it should be a no-brainer. But what they mean by that is that they haven't really been getting as much rain over in the Crow's Nest Pass or Elkford as we've gotten down here in Fernie. But the snowpack can become wet through, these rising freezing levels, solar input, increase in temperature, a bunch of things. So if that snowpack starts to get wet, be wary of a wet loose problem. And then the third problem we have is a cornice problem, and that's just found in the Lizard Range and the Flathead. We're not seeing that as much in the Crow's Nest Pass, despite all the winds they've been having. We've had tons of snow here, lots of strong winds, and cornices have been developing everywhere. I was out kind of near Harvey Pass on the weekend, and I noticed that there was cornices on every single aspect of a bunch of different ridges, so like 360 degrees of cornice, which is crazy. It should typically just be, in one direction where the wind's been blowing, and they might get stripped if the wind changes, but it seems like the wind has been swirling. It's been quite variable, so we're seeing cornices everywhere. And just with the increase in temperature, those cornices might just be, they're just kind of primed for falling. So those can be a huge trigger on the snowpack, on the instabilities. So definitely don't be traveling anywhere near, under, around a cornice, on top of a cornice. Don't do it. Okay, so this is basically just a quick rundown of what we're seeing in the snowpack. So Lizard Range Flathead. We don't really have any instabilities in the mid-pack or the lower snowpack. Yeah, things have been rounding out quite nicely. The snowpack is pretty stable. We talked about that spotty surface horror. Again, we don't know the distribution super well, so that's not something we can really pinpoint and tell you exactly where it is. So that's something you kind of have to be a little weary about. And then basically the new snow, the wind, the uncertainty around the freezing level and the temperatures, those are what is going to be driving the hazard for the next few days. In the South Rockies, so Elkford, Crow's Nest Pass, we have that healing deep persistent slab problem that's at the base of the snowpack. But luckily that bridging crust in the middle of the snowpack is just bridging over any of those instabilities. One thing to note about that is when a persistent slab problem or a deep persistent slab problem gets taken off of our hazard, it's good to kind of keep thinking about it slightly, because one thing that we're not doing when we go to the South Rockies is traveling into steep rocky features in the Alpine, because we're worried about that thin to thick snowpack where maybe those facets haven't fully rounded out yet and they might just be closer to the surface and it might just be primed for triggering just a deeper instability in the snowpack. Up in the Alpine, the freezing, that bridging crust might not be as thick, so it might be easier to break through, it might be breaking down. So even though this deep persistent slab problem isn't actually on the board, it's definitely still worth having in the back of your mind, mostly just in those thin to thick snowpacks, that steep, rocky Alpine start zones. And then, yeah, they haven't had as much recent snow or rain as we have, but, they've had extreme winds. So we've got wind slab top to bottom, and then their freezing level is increasing just like ours. So those are what's really driving things. Okay, this is just a little bit of terrain and travel advice. So yeah, the first sentence, keep your guard up at all elevations. It kind of seems like every aspect in every elevation band has its own problem to worry about. So it is a little bit complicated. Plus with this incoming weather, which we're going to talk about, things are getting just a little, complicated, I guess. Seeing wind slab below tree line is crazy. Some advice about cornices. They often break further back than you expect. So, maybe just avoid them altogether. Definitely don't travel on top of them. With this warming trend, don't travel underneath them. They're more likely to break, with this incoming weather. The surface horror, the distribution is highly variable. We don't know exactly where it's found. We have an idea. We found it in the places where we have an idea, but, we haven't looked every single corner of the entire forecasting region. So yeah, stay frosty on the surface door. And then of course, keep in mind high density of wet avalanches can make them super destructive. So just because you're kind of thinking wet loose, it's not a big deal. It's actually, that's a huge deal. And when those things set up, they set up like cement. So yeah, big problem. The forecasters always put their confidence when they write a forecast every single day. And currently they have their confidence at moderate. So we have some information, we're getting decent weather data, but there is a lot of uncertainty surrounding our entire forecasting region. A big part of that is just limited field ops. We haven't been in the field since Friday. Tomorrow will be our first day of the week. So, we've had good couple days, 4 or 5 days without actually getting field data. And then min reports, there haven't been a ton of min reports. And so that's where we really lean on you guys to post those just to help us out with the forecast. And then whenever we have these big warming trends, we're usually, if it cools right after these warming trends, we have, a good idea of how strong the bond might be on the upper snowpack. But we have these rising freezing levels with a lot of uncertainty surrounding when it's actually going to cool. And so, yeah, it might just take a little bit longer for these storm slabs to actually settle out. And then this is our incoming weather. So yeah, the big thing I noticed looking at today, tomorrow, and into Thursday is that there is still going to be a ton of wind. Tomorrow they're forecasting 50-kilometer ridgetop winds. Tree line temperatures +4, freezing level rising to 3,700 meters. Actually, sorry, good news. I did this part yesterday and they've updated it. It's only rising to 3,500 meters tomorrow. So, I know, yay, wind, woo! But we are entering a period of high pressure. So there's really not going to be any precip in our forecasting region until, for at least a week. I think they're kind of, looks like the 20th, maybe. I don't want to forecast that far in the future. But it looks like we're not really going to be getting any precip in the next few days. But we are going to be seeing rising temperatures, increasing freezing levels. And then by Thursday, those freezing levels are dropping. So we're going to have this nice, schmooey wet snowpack. It's going to freeze. It's going to be nothing on top of it. Sounds like real good skiing to me. Yeah, so uncertainty though. We don't really know. I can't predict any of that. Anyway, these are the big takeaways for tonight that I want you guys to go home with. So yeah, relatively solid mid and lower snowpack in both of our regions. We talked a little bit about that thin to thick snowpack in the Alpine in the South Rockies, but yeah, things are relatively strong. Our biggest problems right now are the new snow or wind slab forming pretty much at all elevations, and then that spotty buried surface hoar that can still be found in certain areas. Yeah, we're getting into some warm weather, increased freezing level, high temps. The conditions are going to change, and they might change pretty quickly. And then following that, a period of high pressure. We won't be seeing precip for a little while. And yeah, it's just really those surface instabilities that are driving the hazard, which sometimes can be relatively simple, but like that terrain and travel advice said, there's kind of a problem on every aspect and every elevation. So things are complicated. So yeah, just watch out for those changing conditions and post them in. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Olivia hates when I do this. Does anyone have any questions? There's one in front.
You roughly know what the freezing level was in the last one?
I think today I saw it rose to 2,500 meters. Sorry, the question was what the freezing level was last night, and it just rose throughout the night because there was snow, and then as the day went on, it just got warmer and warmer. So it's currently at 2,500 and probably rising. Sorry. I don't make the rules. Does anyone else have any questions? Awesome. Thank you. Can we give Olivia another round of applause for giving up her time this evening? Okay, so we're going to have a quick break. In that hand again. So we are starting the second half. We're going to start the second half with Megan Kelly. Some of you might recognize her, actually, right? Might recognize her from Ski Hill. So she is the Assistant Ski Patrol Director up at Farm. She's also a dog handler. So you have two dogs that have been part of the Avalanche Patrol. And she is a CAA professional member level 2. And she's going to talk to us about ski access.
Hello, thanks very much for having me. Yeah, I'm easily recognizable at the hill. I'm wearing orange like everyone else, but I usually have a loud German Shepherd in front or behind me playing ball. Come and say hi next time you see us out there. Phoenix especially loves thumping. Yeah, so I thought I would just talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I think all of us living in Fernie know how lucky we are to have some amazing backcountry access via the ski hill. The pros of accessing the backcountry from a hill is that usually you got to take a lift through the BTL, so no slogging on a logging route. You don't need the sled. You can get into the tree line. It allows for some, quicker access laps. The cons that I can think of is that, especially over the years that I've been in Fernie, I've been on patrol for 19 years in town for too long. We definitely see the backcountry access, off the side of the hill picking up in popularity, which is why I think it's important to talk about the access points, how we can work together as a team so that we can, keep allowing safe access to the backcountry, and especially ensure that when you come back onto Fernie Alpine Resort, that you're just aware of the hazards and how we'd like you to move through our terrain. So just before I get started, how many people use the hill to get into the backcountry on a regular basis? Quite a few. Cool. And what's the favorite side? Who likes to go out Falling Star, like Mammoth side more? Okay, how about the other way? Fishbowl 2000. Oh, less popular. Interesting. Awesome. So if you come up to Fernie, we have 5 primary access gates. I'm going to talk about Lost Boys Pass, Mammoth Droppings, Polar Peak, Snake Ridge, And then the 100% option, which is the Gorby Red Tree Road down at the bottom. Here's just our trail map. I'm showing 1, 2, 3 up at Polar Peak, 4 over in the Cedar Bowl, and 5 down low at the bottom. And I'll go through those here in a moment. Just some things to remember. The backcountry access gates via Fernie Alpine Resort, these gates don't imply that we're doing any avalanche control. So we have all our avalanche control happening in the resort. So when you head out via these gates, you're the avalanche experts. You have to be prepared with your avalanche PPE, know how to use it, be practicing regularly, taking courses, the companion rescue course, your AST level 1 and 2. I like to think of those as like getting my learner's permit and my driver's license before going into the backcountry. And you need to be self-sufficient. So I think a myth that we hear sometimes is if you're just outside the boundary that the ski patrol will come and get you. We're actually technically not allowed. So our primary responsibility is to our guests in the resort. However, if someone got injured just outside the resort, we can coordinate with search and rescue. We can help get search and rescue to you, and we can act as search and rescue volunteers with them. But we can't really go out as Fernie Alpine Resort employees because then we would have no coverage at all. That being said, if someone's like just off Falling Stars, just off the boundary, once in a while you see us pop in with a toboggan and do a rescue if we have the resources, but we still make that call to search and rescue. So we're still going through that step, which you can imagine may delay the rescue as well. So just something to think about there. So number 1, I think one of my favorites, Lost Boys Pass and Mammoth droppings. So before I get started into Lost Boys Pass with a name like that, you know there's a good story. And I asked Robin to come up and tell a story of when he's been lost in Lost Boys Pass. You gonna tell us? This is Rubber Round. Robin sings.
Thank you, Megan. Yeah, Lost Boys Pass got its name by a few people have gone through there and gotten lost. I think it was before we started the timber side, so it would have been around 1997 or so. After the lifts were built, but Lost Boys Cafe wasn't there yet. So I guess 98, 99, when we were skiing in there, people started to go through Lost Boys pretty regularly. And the temptation there is to continue, to go down. And you go down and down, the skiing's good. And then all of a sudden it's like a long way to come back up. And people think, oh, we'll just keep going down. And a couple of photographers, the famous writer for the Calgary Sun on New Year's Eve, they went out to Lost Boys and ended up there for the night. So no cell phone coverage back there. Cell phone coverage, I think, is better now, but it's spotty at best. So big rescue was initiated. They were not found until the next day when search and rescue found them coming up from the bottom, and they ended up going out. And they ended up on the front page of the Calgary Sun, picture of them hunkered down overnight in there. Now, what Megan was talking about being prepared whenever you go out of bounds, always, I have to admit, I had a really close call of almost spending the night in Lost Boys myself. We ascended Mammoth Head, quite foggy conditions. Myself and my friend. And as we started to skin up, he said he had his GPS with him. And I said, why are you bringing your GPS today? We're just going to Mammoth Head. Why would you bring your GPS? I was mocking him. And then we got to the top and we met up with another group of friends of ours. So when we left the top together, I kind of ended with the other group that was there. My friend with his GPS followed our route back down. And myself and the other group, we skied off about 90 degrees to where we should have been. We were trying to go back to the skin track. But we were following our tips. Snow was great. Visibility was not great. Skied of the whole run. Oh, this is fantastic. And sort of stopped at a certain point, you know, you've skied almost, you know, you've skied enough that you need to start going back to the right to find the skin track and get back to Lost Boys Pass. Well, having skied off at 90 degrees, it's shaped like a bowling ball. So we skied off that way instead of that way. We were a long way from the skin track, maybe 1.5 kilometers or 2. And we did not know that. So as we, you know, okay, we got to go back to the right. We started to traverse back to the right, you know, with our no skins on, still descending a little bit, you know, and after half an hour, we're not there yet. Now and it's foggy and everything looks the same in the fog. It's incredible. So now it's getting late. It's almost 4 o'clock. Phone calls are being made, spotty phone calls. Cell phones are going dead. Like a couple of us had cell phones. One guy called his wife and said, "Oh yeah, we're kind of lost, but we'll be fine." And then his phone went dead. And then that was the emergency call went out. So now the phones are going off in town. And people are, they're lost. And, you know, so we continued to traverse around, still not finding where we were. We ended up putting our skins back on and started ascending and traversing to the right. Another half hour. And now it's almost, you know, it's after 4. It's getting late. It's getting dark. And we're lost. Like, I'm like, this is not making any sense to me. Like, I'm starting to get confused. I'm starting to get a little excited because I really don't know where I am and I don't know what's going on. We continue to traverse to the right. We gain a little ridge. It's still super foggy. And we start to think in our minds that we went under the skin track and crossed, and now we're on the other side going up. And there's just a hint of should we turn back and go back the other way. And if we'd have done that, we would have spent the night out there, no question. We convinced ourselves, no, keep going, keep going, keep going. Finally, a tiny little bit of visibility to see that, oh, there's the uphill on the other side. Another 10 minutes, we were back at our skin track. And we got out of there before dark. And I didn't have to make that phone call to the ski patrol and tell them I was lost. But you know, you can know exactly where you are and still have a problem. Carry your gear and be ready for an overnight. So you just never know.
Thank you. I told you with a name like that, I had a good story. Thank you, Robin, very much for sharing that. I like going up Lost Boys Pass because you can get to the top of Mammoth Peak. You can do a cool ridge walk over to the other side into the drop-ins. You can go down to the new cabin in the back, the Wimster cabin, which is awesome to access. You get to this gate via Falling Star. But like Robin said, the key thing with this gate is that you have to come back uphill to get back to this exit. So all of our backcountry gates, we try to mark our ski area boundaries with orange discs to let you know when you're leaving the boundary. And then there'll be a gap in the rope. There's a little bit of area signage usually that tells you, you know, about the area you're entering into, and just letting you know that you're leaving the area boundary and that you must be prepared. Just a note with this. So at Lost Boys Pass, we have the above area timber headwalls. Some people know what I mean by that. So when you're skiing White Pass, if Falling Stars, if you're riding the White Pass lift, let's go with that. Falling Stars on your left, and there's that big ditch that catches avalanches. And then there's a big headwall there. That's the timber headwall. So at Fernie, we call that our above area. So that's an area that we're controlling. We're doing explosives control, and we'll open that ditch, and we'll open some of the skiable lines that access the ditch, and that's called timber head. There's a few lines up there. So when you leave Lost Boys, sometimes those avalanche signs will be open, and you're allowed to ski back into the resort. But most of the time, if it's not spring or high pressure, they'll be closed, and we're just allowing you at Lost Boys to access the backcountry. So just a special note, it mostly just pertains to this area and also, I guess, technically the Polar Peak. But we'll get there. So just a big picture view of the whole timber area. So you can see the timber head wall. You can see where the timber head wall sign line is, that arrow at the top. You'll see the Lost Boys Pass access gate arrow. And then downhill, we have the Siberia Ridge access gate, which I'm calling Mammoth droppings. And that's coming up next. So our second exit is Mammoth dropping. I would say this one's gained popularity in the last, I don't know, 10 years for sure. Typically, people would go out Lost Boys and sometimes exit this way. Now we see way more people going up to get in to Mongolia Bowl. And the cool thing about this is you can do like an up and over, and ski down to the Nordic trails once we have a good snowpack, which I think if you did it right now, you'd be cursing a lot. And don't take a snowboarder if you do that early season. I've done that a couple times, talked about near misses. I've definitely done that with a headlamp with somebody swearing at me for hitting them there. Yeah, so you definitely want a bigger snowpack. This is a great gate. All of our gates, actually, just a note, I'll speak to this more at the end. It's a blessing and a curse. So all of our backcountry gates lead into challenging and complex terrain. I'm referring to the language that you'd find on the Avalanche terrain rating scale that you can find on Avalanche Canada. So we don't have any simple backcountry terrain outside of the resort, which means the skiing's good. But it does mean that when the avalanche hazard is higher, you can't find appropriate terrain to ski if you're using the evaluator card. So you do have to balance that. So just remember, anytime you go into the backcountry, but even as ski build, check that terrain rating and make sure that you're choosing appropriate terrain. The big thing here is that you have to re-enter the resort onto Falling Star with both these gates. During the day, that's not a problem at all, right? You're just coming in. One hazard note, the ski patroller in me has to say this. We see a lot of injuries from people skiing way too fast in their Dynafits and then exploding on Falling Star. So just remember that touring gear isn't alpine skiing gear, and you have to ski differently, especially on icing grooming at the end of the day. So it's like super fun for the backcountry, but be aware of that hazard. Now, if it's after hours, we ask that you don't come in bands. So after hours, I have a slide at the end that explains why, but the biggest hazards are machinery, our cats, and winch cable. So I'll kind of get there at the end and explain why. Awesome. Our third gate is our least open gate. It's Polar Peak. It's right at the top of the mountain. It's right where the word saddle is, basically. And we allow access to this gate when the terrain is open. So the reason why is that if we're close to an avalanche hazard, then we can't be putting ski tours in there because that would look bad. And then if we're closed for conditions, it means it's too dangerous to go up there, right? And we no longer put the road in, which was, in the past, we would allow people to go up the road when we were closed for conditions closure because that was safer travel, but now we don't have that option. So you're only allowed to access that gate when Polar Peak is open, and that accesses some pretty cool terrain. It goes over to Thunder Meadows. It's one of the ways to get to the Thunder Meadows cabin, and you can ski Polaris Bowl as well. So special note with Polar Peak is there's no re-entry back into the hill. The Lizard Head Wall is permanently closed terrain. Same with the Curry Head Wall. It's like Timber Head Wall. So Curry Head Wall is another above area that we have, and that's only open when the avalanche control is done, when those signs are flipped. So even if it's after hours, you can't re-enter the resort. And yeah, it's a really nice tour to Thunder Meadows. Again, this is just all these images are from our avalanche safety plan. So just showing our Polaris Bowl, like the sideline, and you can see the clown chutes, the Curry Head Wall access gate, the sideline, and then the Polar Peak access gate would go off the back. 4 and 5, I just lumped them together because they're both on the old side of the mountain. Number 4, I would say, is probably the second most popular backcountry access route. Off Snake Ridge, we have a gate there. We just encourage you, if you're up there about to go out, go ahead and speak to the forecaster. They're found in both top huts, the Lizard and the Timber. And the Lizard forecaster is usually around the top hut. You can kind of ask them some questions just to clarify, access points. Because sometimes on the Cedar High, we'll do a few weird things. So if everyone remembers last year, Snake Ridge was closed because we had all those big glide tracks, right? So there was a lot of the season, I want to say at least 40%, that we weren't skiing Snake Ridge. So we didn't want to just, say, okay, you can't go to the backcountry via Cedar High. It was tricky though, because it was an avalanche hazard that was closing Snake Ridge. So we were like, oh, what do we do? So we worked with some stakeholders, the ski touring club, talked to Mammoth at the Hill, and we came up with a system that you see on the right, which is that we had a lot of signage explaining that you could access the backcountry, but you weren't allowed to re-access the resort. You couldn't go and lap Snake Ridge, you couldn't go and lap Fishbowl. You were allowed out the Cedar High into the backcountry, so you can go up 2000, 2001, go to the cabin. You could do the up and over to Island Lake Lodge, which I think is the best tour that we have. Yeah, so that was a cool thing that, we finally worked out last year that I think was, a promising feature for sure. So the Cedar High course does have a lot of avalanche hazards, so you'll see that close from time to time, which will close this access. But the good news is that we do have the 100% road, as I like to call it, which is the Gorby access from the provincial park or the bottom of the haulback if we have a pass. You can ski tour up and then you're into 2000 Fishbowl. Fishbowl itself is quite shallow, complex terrain, as we all know. And then just something to remember when you're going out Gorby to access the backcountry, you can't just go and do snake laps. Like if you were caught in there, that would be bad. So we're allowing that access just to get into 2000. So that's a nice option. It's if you're planning a trip to the cabin, that's a good choice just because it is open, right? We would hate for you to show up at the top of White Pass with your overnight gear and then we can't see you up the Polar Peak. So there is always this 100% way. And then again, this is just our, the kind of big view of the Cedar Bowl from the Avalanche Safety Plan. So you can see the north area, the north ski area boundary, we call it the north boundary. That's where that upper gate is. And you can see all the big avalanche terrain above on the Cedar High and why that can be closed, when it's snowing lots. Yeah, so now we kind of get to the important safety notes. The image on the right is what we're really concerned about when you re-enter the resort on Falling Star. After hours, Falling Star is one of our flagship blue runs. It gets groomed quite regularly. It's usually groomed early in the rotation, which means the cats are going to be out there as soon as public are off. So we start our sweep at about 4:30. We get down to the shop 4:45, 10 to 5. The cats are out the door at 4:30. And usually I get passed by one with the dog on the way up to Falling Star. And more importantly, on steeper pitches like the Hell's Gate Gully, parts of Falling Star, the Bear Run, just to name a few, they'll have a winch cable. And those winch cables are these big metal cables that get stretched up to a kilometer-ish in length. And when they're tight, you actually can't see it. And you can't hit that. If you hit that, you can get very injured or worse. So that's what we're worried about, right? Is that you would run into that heavy machinery operating, trying to maintain the ski runs. The other note is that if you are taking the lifts, using our terrain, you require some kind of lift ticket, seasons pass or day ticket. And Fernie Alpine Resort doesn't do a single ride for ski touring. Some places do, but we don't have that option. So yeah, I do require a valid lift ticket. I said this once, but I'll just say it just so it's clear. If the train's closed due to avalanche hazard, it means no gate access. Yeah, and then follow the routes. If we have a weird one in like last year with Cedar High, follow the signage. You can ask for clarification, like I said, any patroller or the forecasters. And we encourage you to go ahead and call in advance. With our dispatcher, like we'll hopefully have a chance she'll call up to the top hut, get some answers and try to set you straight. What it's hard to do, and we feel bad, is like if someone says, they call a week in advance, and you're a planner, trying to say, hey, can I go to Thunder Meadows next Friday? And you say, well, sorry, like we don't know, so that's the reality. So day of is better for us to be able to give you a picture. If you're calling, try to call post 9 a.m. The dispatchers have a crazy busy period from 8 to 9, so they'll have a little bit more time to connect you with the right resources after. Yeah, and then again, just a note about no avalanche control beyond the resort boundary. And I think that's it for me. Are there any questions, comments? Yeah. Yep. I can repeat it.
Yeah, so say that you're technically in Lost Boys.
Yeah.
Like a game and whatnot, something's slowing you down.
Yeah.
Possible 15.
Yeah.
It's the safest way.
Yeah, so the question was, you're in Lost Boys Pass, you got delayed, now you're after hours and you want to re-enter the resort. You can do that, down falling star, you just have to, I would be defensively knowing that the machinery has the right of way. If you hear a snowcat stop, try to get a visual with the driver that you could pass. The other thing you could do is if you call the ski patrol number that's on your season's pass, that will automatically go to security. And then you could check in with them and say, hey, we had an issue. We might see our car in the parking lot. Don't call search and rescue yet, because they will do that eventually. And I want to head down this route, and they can clear that route on the radio with the cat driver. Any other questions? You guys are letting me off the hook easy. Awesome. Well, enjoy the ski trip, and I hope you're all using the Backcountry gate soon.
Okay, awesome. So we just want to say thank you again to our sponsors. So thanks to the CenturyLink. Can we just give them a round of applause for hosting them? Thank you to the speakers tonight, so Olivia and Megan. If we can give them.